G'day everybody. Sorry for the late upload. It's been a big day, night, few weeks. And I'm sorry for the lack of content, both here and on my blog. I will get the piece up, written up very shortly about the 4-day hunting trip that I took with my friend Tom. Don't worry, that is coming, and that is something that I'm very keen to write about because it was pretty funny actually from the get-go. Anyway, there's something here I wanted to actually talk about, which is why I'm sitting here on my couch, got my beer in hand, and it's something that I don't think I've actually spoken about here before, but nevertheless something I'm no less passionate about. And that is, of course, mixed martial arts. Now, it came about around a week ago, maybe a bit more. And the reason why I've taken so long to actually do this and talk about it is I actually wanted to do a bit of research on it and see what I could actually dig up. Now, what came about in the news, and I think it was 10 News, maybe. I think it was 10 News, yeah. It was Prime or 10, was one of those two. Was that Victorian Premier Dan Andrews was looking at banning the UFC from coming to Victoria not because it's a blood sport, and not because it's violent, and not because it's barbaric or human cockfighting or any of those other straw man arguments that people come up with whenever mixed martial arts or quote-unquote cage fighting comes up in conversation, and it pisses me off to no end. It really does. It makes me really angry when these professional athletes, these human gladiators, when these modern-day gladiators, I should call them, are reduced to really just base animals. It really, really makes me mad. It was promoted by, I can't remember the fellow's name, but the claim is that it promotes violence against women. 2 men punching each other in the face promotes violence against women. Now, the fight is, of course, Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya at Marvel Stadium here in Melbourne. Middleweight title fight. Whittaker being the first Australian champion that the UFC have produced, yet another champion to be produced from the Ultimate Fighter. Just firstly, I want to say, if this is true, if these claims, which I can only find on one news source, is true, then I'm sorry, Dan Andrews, it's the first thing I've actually looked at and gone, you're a fucking moron. Most of the things that you've brought in, most of your policies, I've actually agreed with. This is one where I've sort of gone, I'm sorry, mate. That's not only factually incorrect, but it also, given that he was the premier that actually made the cage legal in Victoria, when the, I don't know if any of you might remember from about 4 or 5 years ago, the Click for Vick campaign. It was a hashtag that was going around social media, it was going around Facebook, Twitter, etc. to legalise the cage in Victoria. Now that's for... MMA was still happening in the state. It was just happening in a ring rather than a cage, which is far less safe, and because then you've got instances of fighters falling out of the cage and things like that that happen quite often in a ring. You've only got to look at old Pride fights to see that, and Pride, of course, hasn't been around for 12 years, I think. 2007 was the last Pride event. And that was in Japan. So it would make no sense for Dan Andrews then to then make the cage illegal after that. It's not logical. And again, given that I can only find this on one news source, and given that it's, what are we now? Maybe a year, two since the last election. They'll be fostering, I don't want to say hatred, but dissent towards the current state government. So it makes sense to me that they would be then planting these kinds of seeds to then later on dredge up come election time. And it would make sense that it would be from the media that supports the opposition rather than the current government. Just my thoughts, It sounds to me like a whole lot of frog shit. It makes no logical sense. I am, however, curious to see what Dan Andrews and the current Labor government have got to say about it. And I'm curious to see really what their reasoning is, if this does end up to be truthful. I just want to know why. Why would you legalise something and then take it away 4 years later? I don't know if those of you might remember the kick heard round the world, as I like to call it. Happened here in Melbourne, and again the same arena. Back then it was called Rod Laver Arena. When Holly Holm, of course, famously head kicked Ronda Rousey into retirement, and that was all she wrote. And that was, unfortunately, was working that weekend, so I was unable to go. I was very, very disappointed. But that was, I think, November or December of 2015, so that was nearly 4 years ago. So it makes no sense that this campaign would happen from this same premier that threw this really big event and made a lot of money for the state, did a lot of promotion, and it's not just money from the fighters coming in, it's money from their teams, it's money from people buying tickets and people coming from, say, country towns all around Melbourne to travel, and so it's money the V-Line would be getting, and money that people would be spending on the metro trains and motels in the city, and people going to Crown, and people, I don't need to advertise, all of those businesses that are in Melbourne. It's restaurants, it's all of that stuff that's all encompassing that we need to be thinking about that would potentially be affected by this ban. And not just that, it's looking at those other sports that these people would no doubt support as well. Things like, AFL football, things like boxing, rugby league, these other rival sports, surfing, fucking golf and tennis, And that's what I think that this person is coming at it from is, I think if we look deeper into where this person sits, there would be no doubt somebody there that would support boxing or that would support AFL or rugby league or one of these rival sports. It makes logical sense. And again, if I'm wrong, if you can tell me, hey, look, here's this source, and this source, where he said it, great, no worries, sorry, I'll retract what I said, in which case I go back to what I said in the initial part of the video. What the fuck? What were you thinking? Anyway, that's all from me for now. I appreciate you listening to me rant, and cheers.